We're moving into the needs assessment portion of the presentation, which is my task to do. And basically it answers the questions of, okay, you've got all this space, how do you use it, and do you need it, is the big issue for you. It's like sometimes we own a big house, and as we look around and the kids start leaving us and doing some other things, we realize we don't need as much square footage as we did in the past or whatever, and we start evaluating that. So I wanted to see how you're using your facilities. The methodology we use is that we gathered information through individual surveys, which Father Ted mentioned to you, which was very, very helpful. They basically filled that folder for me. So I read through all of those and did a summary, which you'll see in the final report. There'll be a summary of what the surveys told us. We did have 2 workshops, October 10th and October 17th, where you visit with me on 2 full-day sessions, and we talked about the various needs and how your ministries function and where they meet. And we also, because we only had a few youth attending those meetings due to ball games and whatever, we had another youth session, which happened on December 2nd at Bascom. And that was a great session with 38 youth that came to see us and talk to us about what we're doing. We basically asked the following questions. What facility spaces do you use? When do you use those spaces? I wanted to see if you're having trouble scheduling your spaces, if they overlap, if things like that are happening. Are your currently used spaces adequate for your needs in terms of their size and their amenity? Basically, do they have water, fridge, or other storage stuff? And are they accessible? And then I started getting into your ministries themselves and say, do you anticipate growth in your ministry that would affect your space? In other words, are the spaces beginning to affect how your ministry is functioning? Are they too small? Are you crowded? Are people not coming because they can't get to you? How is that happening? And also, are you seeing a growth happening in the various ministries that you're trying to achieve in the 2 parishes? And then we also asked people to dream. And that was a wonderful time. They dreamed on their papers, but also when we talked with each other individually, they were very open in expressing some of the dreams they had for the parishes and where they thought they should go, and some great needs that way. Some of the dreams were pie in the sky, big dreams, and you may see some of those here in a few minutes. And some of the dreams are just realistic dreams about, I'm concerned for the church. And I like to see us grow, and I like to see us thrive. So it's an interesting, heartfelt moments we had in all our workshops. And again, I want to say I thank you for being honest and open with me and sharing with me from your heart. Because I sense deeply that you love your church and that you want to see the best for it. So I appreciate that very much in terms of our time together. As we went through those 3 days and I read through your reports, several concerns that I continually heard. They kept repeating themselves, so they came pretty thematically. One was a concern for the elderly and the physically challenged. I don't want to group those together, but as I'm getting older, I'm starting to be the same. So I apologize for that. But we are concerned about elderly people being able to get into our facilities, being able to come to our education classes, being able to come to fellowship, to come to those areas. And we're certainly concerned about the physically handicapped, or physically challenged. As Urban mentioned a minute ago, I don't think you have any facility that you currently own that's by code accessible. You have a minimal ramp, you have a few accesses that you can help people with, but you are not to code in any of your facilities to what they say you need for those who have physical impairment or have wheelchair bounds or other issues. As we're also finding in our church work, we're mentioning and talking about the baby boomers, we're all getting older. We're starting to need those things, and it's starting to affect our attendance. We have the millennialists, also millennials, that are also coming behind us, which we'll talk in a few minutes. But our parishes and our churches are certainly getting older, certainly those who are faithful and who have attended churches for many, many years. And we want to be sensitive to their needs. Secondly, we heard a concern for staff efficiencies, increased privacy. Even non-staff people mentioned quite frequently that the mixture of office and rectory was just not working very well. And not because Father Tim is very gracious about it, but they are very concerned about the fact that they have to invade his privacy, basically. your office is closed on Monday because you want to give him a day of rest and a day off. You have to clean off his dining room table if you're doing a project so he can have his dinner. It's just very difficult to have the office and the rectory mixed as you're presently doing it. And I heard that from more people than just simply the staff people. And I would mention I've never heard it from Father Tim. So he's very gracious and very accommodating in what you wish him to do. But it's very difficult for that to happen. I heard a great concern for parish life, fellowship, and I'll get into the word unity. Parish life basically meant that you have no place to gather. You have a gym, but the gym is too small. You rented this space to give your place a big enough place to meet in a gathering such as you have here. Your gymnasium is the only large space, and it's really too small. And as we hear, it's not air conditioned. It has a wonderful kitchen that only serves people 3 foot high. I'm not quite sure what this knee serving thing is, but I commend you for it. It's wonderful. And so there's a real concern that you have nowhere to get together. I heard also people say to me, I don't want to just go to church and look at the back of my brother's head and walk back out. All your worship facilities have no gathering space, no place to stay, no place to mingle, no place to gather. And I can tell you that the old days when pray, pay, and obey were enough for churches are gone. We need to live a Christian life. And for a Christian life, we also need to have that fellowship. We also need to have a sense of community. And I heard that from you. You said that to me, that you wanted some place to get together and to be a family of God. I heard also about unity. There was a lot of talk about these 2 parishes or 3 parishes or 5 parishes. And why are we still talking about it? And why are we still doing it? And that's a decision for you to make. And I can't give you a comment over that other than to tell you I was confused. I constantly looked at you and said, oh, who are you, and who are you, and who are you, and why are you, and you're doing the same thing he's doing. I see inefficiencies, I see duplication, I see confusion even on your part as to who are you as a family of God. And I'll just express that as that, and you can deal with it as you wish. But there's some things to me, I think, that it was expressed to me, and I heard it quite clearly. I got to the point where I just simply said the North Parish and the South Parish, which being from South Carolina didn't sound very good because I started to think about the different things that we used to do. But I don't want you to be that way, and I don't want 224 to be the line between either. I heard greatly that you wanted to get rid of that confusion. I also heard a concern for the youth, and we were so concerned with the youth that we had another session to have them come back. We were really concerned that when your children are meeting confirmation, they're leaving you. They're saying, okay, I've done what I needed to do, I did what my parents told me to do, and I'm leaving the faith. Not just your church, but possibly leaving your faith. And that hurts you, and that makes you feel deep inside that something happened, something is wrong with all of that. From the youth, I just simply heard that church is not what their parents think it is. And they want places where they can have fellowship, and where they can invite their friends, and where they can be themselves. And when you think about what you have currently in your parishes, you have no place that the youth can say, that is my space, as far as I can tell. And so they expressed to me a deep need to have that type of space. And then there was a concern always for the future. Where are we going? We're getting older. Our attendance is maybe declining. Are we sustainable? I think you've asked that question for many years now. Is this where we should be going? And what is it we should do? I wish I was a prophet. I wish I could give you all those good answers. All I can do as your consultants is to give you some commonalities and point at you into some directions today that hopefully you can respond to and take action on. Okay? Some of the things I did find when I looked at your places, based upon the workshop you gave me, I prepared what's called a program of need. It's hard to see, and you would see it in the final report, but basically I say you need one office, it has this much square footage, you need a secretary, so much square footage, a classroom of this youth size, and worship for 500, etc., and list the square footages, add those up, add walls, mechanical rooms, etc., and come up with the square footage you need for a facility. In the number that you see of 54,072 square foot, I added in a fellowship hall for 500 people. I did a worship center for 500 persons. I put in a youth room. I put in a blanket maker's room, a blanket maker's storage room. I put in a youth room. I put in a new commercial kitchen. I put in all those spaces in the program of need that you'll see in the report. And that totaled up to 54,072 square feet. You currently maintain and occupy 79,569 square feet. Basically 47% more space than you use or even need. When you projected the future of your church's ministry, you maintain and take care of 47% more space. Now my parents and I, my parents used to own a house in South Carolina, and 1/4 of it was the living room. And the living room, my dad called it the funeral parlor because none of us could ever go into it because we couldn't touch the furniture in the room. And basically, you're doing the same thing. You bought a big house, but you're only using 3/4 of it. Okay? When I met with your groups, I said, where do you meet? The Emmaus room. 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 You always meet the Emmaus room. Why? Because it's renovated. Because it's nicer. Because it has lights at work. It's got air conditioning. It's a nice space. Okay? You don't meet at the top of the building. You don't meet in other places because they aren't in good shape. So that was my first revelation. My second revelation was look at your worship environments. You have 5 worship centers. And I know a lot of them are inherited from blending parishes and some other issues. But I asked you, and these are numbers you gave me, what your current capacity in the churches are, and what your largest attendance during the year. Largest mass, largest gathering, largest wedding, largest whatever. The numbers you gave me is you have seating capacity for roughly 1,912 seats in your 5 worship centers. Your largest gathering is 675 total. Okay? Now, some will say, well, when I go to All Saints on Christmas, it feels really full. Well, because you got 572, you're occupying 400 or roughly there. At 80%, you feel full. Okay? Now, these are numbers you gave me, so if they're wrong, I apologize and work on those. So again, except for All Saints, all your worship spaces are underutilized in the use of their seating capacity. And basically, you are occupying 35% of the worship environments that you currently maintain, own, keep, etc. Okay? We then looked at the high points of ministry facilities that you have. Catholic churches have an interesting item called the rectory, where Protestant churches don't normally have those. And you combine those. So again, to repeat what I've already said, your rectory and your office have an interesting lack of privacy for the priest by blending the two together. Your education space, which is really limited only to Parish Hall in New Regal, is lacking amenities, technology, accessibility. Elementary school superintendent a minute ago told me they wanted to spend money on this years ago, and it does get expensive, and Urban showed you some of the money necessary to make that facility better. Fellowship, as I mentioned, no space large enough, like we're gathering here today. And again, the gym lacks amenities, technology, accessibility. Worship, except for All Saints, all spaces are underutilized. They have lack of amenities, technology, accessibility, lack of gathering spaces, and really a lack of consistency between them. Some have good sound systems, some don't. Some have bathrooms, some don't. The worship spaces are just all over the map in terms of what they have available to your parishioners today. So we look at a map, and the map is interesting as well to look at. The distance between St. Patrick Church and New Regal Church is only about 5.2 miles between the two of them. Because of all the merging, you have all these different worship centers all over. But I was told you have 1,200 families, 5 worship centers, and 1 priest. If you don't know it already, you're killing your priests. Okay? And we may chuckle about that, but you're killing your priest. And I said, everyone else, you're killing your priest. He's trying to minister to all of you. He's trying to serve all these needs. He's running all over the place for all these facilities. And you're paying for and maintaining all these facilities as well. It's a very difficult sustainability model to keep. Okay? So what do we do with the information provided? What do we do with all that digestion of things? And there's a lot of it. But again, we're trying to hit high points so that you're not here all day. But what do? We wanted to give you options. And the options are such that you can give us your opinion on various opportunities to do something different, or not do something different. Let me put that. We're going to show you 8 options. I'm going to go through the options very carefully. They will be on the walls behind us when we're done. And we'll tell you about the process we want to go through, but there are 8 options. On the options, we've used some icons. We've used an icon for worship, cemeteries, fellowship halls, office, rectory, and education. And they're a little hard to discern, and I'll try to talk you through them as best I can. But those, if you would agree with me, are really your 6 major elements of church. With me? We can debate small items of that, but those are 6 major elements, and where do we put those elements is always a discussion for us to have. Okay? So I'm going to take you through 8 options, and we'll talk about what to do with the 8 options. Okay? Option 1, do nothing. Easy option. Urban gave you a report on the facility assessment, $4.8 million, and just remember that as a base. Again, that's a number to bring all your buildings up to code, take care of all your issues, make them last longer, be less cost to you in the future, more energy efficient, make their environments equal, make them all accessible, basically make everything in the parish like it is. This option is to say, we're not doing any of that. We're just going to keep on keeping on. And someone mentioned that to me in one of the workshops. Let's just do nothing. That's your choice. So I wanted to give you that as a choice. That means that when a window breaks, you caulk it. If the sump pump breaks, you fix it. It's just stuff, but it's not talking about making a major capital campaign to get things corrected. And that, I should have picked that earlier. Again, you have 79,000 roughly square foot, and you've spent nothing of a major investment. Okay? Number 1. Number 2 is basically following the recommendations that Urban presented earlier. I'll go ahead and click this one. Go ahead and spend the $4.8 million. And again, you would have 80,000 square foot. You would have all the facilities are up to code. All the facilities, all the worship centers are air conditioned. All the worship centers are equal in amenities. Everything is equal in terms of code. I would mention to you that there's one thing that Urban said today. We didn't make any corrections in the spaces. So if you say, I want this room to be bigger, or I want to make this bigger over here, I want to make some adjustments to the room, those aren't quite included in the prices yet until we get into some more design work. This is just, once you get this done, you spend $4.8 million, what you have today is what you will have when you're finished spending $4.8 million. It will just function better. Okay? And be more energy efficient, etc. I did include in this recommendation 2 X's on here. The rectory at Bascom is a good rectory, and the office in New Regal is a good office. And the New Regal building is larger. If nothing else, I suggested in this one, make that decision. Let Bascom be the rectory, and let New Regal be the office. And give your priest privacy, and allow him to live in a space that doesn't have people in his home all the time. That was pretty easy. And actually, this number will go down a bit because some of the sprinkler systems that you heard earlier would be going away because we would be separating office and living if we did this option. So that number would change a bit. Because when you look at the numbers, you look at, I need $190,000 to renovate the rectory. Heck, let's go build a new building. That's a house. Well, a lot of it's because of the commercial requirements of that house. So if you separate those, I can reduce those numbers down. Remember, our numbers today, they're not quotes. They're not, I don't want you to be even talking about the number in terms of, I like 4.8 better than I like 4.6. I want you to be looking at numbers in terms of scale and what you get for scale. They're references to us now. There's a lot more study to come later, but I want you to have realistic numbers so you're not fooled, is basically the approach. Option 3 is to not do anything with the chapels and only focus our efforts on St. Patrick and All Saints. I put the word decommission the chapels, and I don't, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what that means. Does that mean we just simply ignore them? Does that mean we tear them down? Does that mean we sell them? I don't know what that means. It just simply means that the improvements required in the facility assessments we won't invest. And we'll concentrate our efforts and our resources on the 2 campuses of Baskin and New Regal. I would recommend again that Baskin becomes a rectory, New Regal becomes the office. This would be a renovation of the parish hall in New Regal, and basically the list of all the things that we mentioned in that. This one is a little bit cheaper, obviously, because we're not touching the chapels. Okay? So a little less investment by not doing chapels. Number 4 is a variation of that. We would still concentrate ourselves on the 2 campuses, Baskin and New Regal. But instead of just simply renovating the parish hall, we would tear down the gym and add a 500-seat fellowship hall attached to the school with a new kitchen, and plus that includes renovation of the education wing. When I looked at your program, which basically the spaces you require, you have the education spaces in the education wing. They just aren't in good shape. Bathrooms are bad, not accessible, etc. But the spaces are there per the size of classes that you currently have kids for. So that's good news. And I know this is an option you've talked about for many years. And I predict that this gets you to a 66,000 square foot program at about 7.1 million. Now, I want to clarify one more thing. When we're looking at new buildings for you, we're looking at, I can use this word properly, Catholic graded facilities. When you go down 224, you see a fellowship hall at West Independence United Methodist Church, which is a metal building. I'm not proposing you build a metal building because you were building it adjacent to a brick building or church, or you're building a church, etc. So the quality and the cost per square foot is a little higher. If you come back to, almost if I could use a comparison, a St. Gwendolyn gauge of quality versus the Methodist Church on 224. Okay? If you say to me, Jerry, that's too much. We're fine to keep a smaller scale project. We can reduce the square footage costs on that. We can relate that and adjust that with you. But I'm trying to brick campus, brick fellowship hall, nice amenities, like this. Okay? You've invested in a very nice school with very durable materials, brick exterior. The same quality that you see in this building is the kind of building I'm proposing for you in all scenarios. You can be cheaper, but I want to keep you at the upper level for now until you decide what you want to do, so that you're on a high par and I'm not misleading you. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. So that's building a new fellowship hall. Option 5 was interesting. There came a concept that maybe we should do something more centralized in the parish. Possibly we should just build a new parish hall, 500 seats, all the education spaces, all the offices, and the youth room, and put it all in a central location. And I'm showing it on 224, which is somewhere between the 2 main churches. Interesting concept. With this one, obviously, we have to build land. I have to bring utilities to the land. I have to build a new facility. But now we build a fellowship, basically, center for the parishes, so that demographic that you saw has the equal distance to get to a certain facility, and then you still have your 2 worship centers, both in Baskin and New Regal. Interesting concept. We looked at it, it's down to 56,000 square foot, roughly, and at about a $9.3 million price tag. Again, a lot of that is, I bought 10 acres in that proposal. I think I put 20,000 an acre. We had to extend utilities to it. It's a brand new facility, so it's expensive. But it came up in our discussion, so we wanted to give you that as something to look at. Option 6 is to begin to focus simply on New Regal. And to look at the city and say, okay, we're not going to be improving our chapels, and we're not going to be improving anything in Baskin any longer, and we're going to focus only on All Saints and do everything there. The church in New Regal, All Saints, is large enough to handle your masses that you currently are attending. 3 masses there, you would be fine. So you have a large enough church in that location, you have plenty of land in that location, so if I were to repeat and do some other things in that location, this is what I would do. What this option shows us is that I would build, again, a new fellowship hall, and the fellowship hall would have now offices and a youth room, and that would be attached to the school, and the school would be renovated and made into the educational spaces. You note that I said offices in this option because we would keep the rectory, and the rectory would be the offices. So the square footage of this addition would be a little larger than you would have in the other one. If I did that option, I'm at about $6.9 million. And again, you're maintaining and keeping roughly 56,000 square foot once you make this decision. But you're not focusing on your chapels any longer, and you're not focusing on your Baskin facility any longer as well. Option 7 is basically tearing down the school and building a brand new building that hopefully would be attached to the church, because there was also expressed to me a need to attach the parish hall to the church, so when you had Christian education classes, you could go back and forth between worship space and the educational spaces, which is difficult to do now in bad weather. We would, the parish hall would be 500 seats, a new fellowship hall, new educational spaces, new offices, and a youth room, and we attach it all to All Saints Church. Possibly would be all on one level. We could not need an elevator because we could build all one level, and I think you have the land to do so. If it's in approximately that space. Another option we did not look for is maybe doing it on the north side of the church, but the land may be constricted there for us. So if we build it basically in the same spot as your current education parish hall, we could certainly do it there. That option takes us to about $8.8 million. Okay. The next option is to make everybody mad. And basically that means that you abandon everything you have and you go build a brand new facility in a central location in the middle of your parishes. Okay. Pick a site on 224, great visibility, brand new facility. Again, I'm looking at a St. Gwendolyn quality of worship and fellowship. So as I look at that type of quality, and I buy again 10 acres of land, and I build every bit of your facility needs, I'm building that 54,000 square foot that I mentioned to you you need, and I would build it for about $18 million. Okay? In rough numbers. Now, those are my 8 options. You thought the 4.8 was rough on you. Okay? A couple things for you. We're going to ask you to get up in a few minutes. We have the 8 options on the wall behind you. And you've got little stickies when you came in, a yellow, red, and a green dot. I'll tell you what to do with those in a minute. But we're going to ask you to give us just your feelings today. I'm hopeful that we've invited the Holy Spirit to be with us. I'm hopeful that we're prayerful enough to ask ourselves, what is it we should do? Today is not a vote. Today is not a definitive direction. Today is taking the opportunity of us all being together to say, where's your heart? What do you feel? Where do you want to go? And as you consider those options today and help us by giving us some dots, which we're going to report on after it's done, there's 2 things I want you to think about. Doing nothing produces nothing. I gave you that option. But I can tell you, obviously, from anything you do, any endeavor in your life, as you well know, doing nothing produces nothing. Now, you've been doing something. You've been surveying, you've been asking yourselves questions, you've engaged us. So you've been working towards something. I want to encourage you that after today, don't be frustrated and don't quit. Keep going. Because there has to be an answer and there has to be a future for you based upon your collective will and the will of the Holy Spirit. The next option, and the next thought, is sacrifice towards a goal produces growth. I've been working with churches of various denominations, various sizes, for over 30 years. Every church that I've ever worked with who have put themselves towards a sacrificial vision has grown. They have grown in numbers, they have grown in spirit, and they have grown in unity. And the reason is because when you read Scripture, you find that whenever God asks us to make sacrifice, He blesses us. And I believe that is true for you. The church is changing. The world is changing. God does not change. But He adopts and helps us through the times that we do change. We mentioned about the baby boomers getting older, and we're needing to have accessibility. We also have the younger generation today who's saying, I want more than my parents had. You've told them, by building this, that education is important to them. They want to know from you that your faith is also important to you. And that you believe enough in your own God that you would invest in it and give them something to be proud of and grow on. They want a relationship. They want to serve. They want to walk with Christ in a daily way. They want more than maybe we were even taught to have as young adults. And I think that's encouraging for us because that means that there is a future of the church, but it means that we have to respond to it and be prepared for it and to be parents of those children and help them